Wow.
I'm having a normal day, just minding my own business, scrolling through the socials. Of course, go on X, go on Instagram,
X.
and then I see, I'm like, because I have a lot of Swifties, like follower friends who are Taylor Swift fans, but like, I was not expecting you of all people. I like double take. I'm like, what's going on?
Well, first of all, she makes great music. You know, I'm a very well-rounded person when it comes to music. I could listen to different genres. So I don't know why you're so surprised.
And if you're following us here on the video platform, you should be rocking with us every Wednesday at 6 on the Arrowhead Pride platforms, YouTube, Twitter, wherever. You'll see Mark Gunnels' Instagram story. He's got his friendship bracelets on. I see 7. I see gold.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness, Mark. Were you like last place in
Yeah.
your fantasy football league? Like, what's the backstory behind this? Because this is just out of character.
So, okay, so she had 6 nights out here in Los Angeles. If you're not aware, I live in LA right now. And it was at SoFi Stadium, and I happen to live literally down the street from SoFi. So I had a couple of friends that had an extra ticket. I was like, why not? I'm not doing anything. Why not go to a Taylor Swift concert? Just one of the biggest artists in the world right now. And I became a fan.
You
Like
were singing. You were
she
singing at the
puts
top
on
of
a
your
great.
lungs. I already know.
You'll never, never, never. We're getting back together. Yeah. She got some hits, man. I felt the energy in the stadium. It was incredible.
I don't know if we're going to be able to continue this podcast much
Well,
longer
I'm a
after that.
Swiftie now.
Ugh, yuck.
Do you not like Taylor Swift, or what's your deal?
Growing up, I took the Kanye side in that whole thing, so I guess I just kind of stayed along, even though I'm not as strict on that at that side as I once was. But now that I know you're a trusted source. I'll listen to Taylor a little
So
bit
you
more.
didn't go when she was there at Arrowhead?
Did I have $2,000 to spend on some tickets? Heck
Well,
no.
I don't know. I mean, you're always an Arrowhead for anything else. Maybe you got a plug. I don't
No, I didn't make it to. I didn't make it to Taylor Swift. Man, let's get it going. Chiefs Coast to Coast Arrowhead Pride Podcast Network, episode 52.
should have worn my bracelets for the show.
Mark Gunnels is the biggest Taylor Swift fan I know now. He's out in LA. Aaron Ladd here in Kansas City. Steven Serta's behind the board. And we got real football to talk about. Well, kinda. We'll recap the Chiefs' first preseason game down in the Superdome in New Orleans. We'll also look ahead to their next matchup against the Arizona Cardinals in a very familiar place for Chiefs fans once again. We'll talk about that one. And then I will not only ask Mark for his Vegas analysis, but then we'll go to the social media streets to try and dissect some cryptic tweets from Chris Jones as his holdout continues at camp. We love making y'all part of the show. 816-514-1267 is our voicemail line. We'll actually get to a voicemail later in the show. First one in a very long time. But it could be you making part of the show. So chime in and possibly hear your voice part of the show. Also, if you're commenting, hashtag C2C. Jeremiah's already watching on Facebook, says a big Chiefs in the chat. If you like what you're hearing, if you don't like what you're hearing, comments, criticisms, concerns, whatever, we want to hear from y'all here on Coast to Coast. Gonna start this pod shouting out Kansas City, right? Mark Gunnels is just a kid from KC. It's 816 day as we're recording this with August the 16th. So just this podcast wouldn't be possible, or it wouldn't have this same feel without KC, man. What's your favorite thing about 816 day? Your favorite thing about KC?
Oh man! First of all, happy 816 day. I hope you celebrated very well since you didn't do any homework before the show today.
Wow, you just exposed me.
No, we always do our homework. I'm just joking. But yeah, 816 day. I mean, my favorite thing about Kansas City. First of all, I gotta start with the barbecue, man. And I think what? I think I've appreciated it. No, but it's not basic when I've been gone for 6 years. I live in California. This is not a state known for barbecue. right? Like we're known for Mexican food, Korean, everything else. But as far as barbecue, it's not hitting out here. So I think that's made me appreciate it even more. So when I go back, I have to hit up my favorite spots. Like you got to go to Gates, you got to go to Jack Stack, got to go to Q39. Shout out to LCs. Like sometimes it's hard to fit them all in one trip because I be in and out the city. You know how I roll, Aaron. But besides that, I mean, just the hospitality. I think there really is a thing to the Midwestern people. I think we really are just genuinely nice. And I've really, like I said, being out here has made me appreciate more things about being from Kansas City because it's so fast paced out here. People aren't really stopping to see how your day was. Like those are just the little things holding the door for you. If you don't, if you're at a red light out here and you don't go in like within 1 second, they're gonna honk at you. Like that doesn't happen in Kansas City, bro. I'm like, dang, it just turned green. So I think just the little things like that has just made me appreciate being from Kansas City more.
That's how I know you be texting at the red light, sending out some tweets in the middle of traffic.
Nah, I think I'd be changing the Taylor Swift song, trying to mix it up. That's what it is.
Let's get out of here. Chiefs recap. Let's get it.
Mahomes avoids. He's a magician.
Chiefs recap.
You're a fool, first and foremost. I want to start with that. You're an absolute fool.
Hey, man. I don't know what you want me to say.
Saints defeat the Chiefs 26-24 in week 1 of preseason play. Let's go through a couple of the stat lines here as we kind of talk about some of the big headlines. Shane Buechele, hell of a day for him. 11 for 18, 155, 2 touchdown passes, and the 1 interception. Mahomes' line a little different, just the few drives there, 2 for 2, 15 yards, 97.9 rating for him. Big standout day also in the wide receiver department for Nikko Remigio, 6 targets, 4 catches, 71 yards, the longest of those being a 24-yard reception. Obviously, we know how this one ended. The screen pass that gets intercepted, and then the Saints kind of set up the gimme field goal to win it. But I want to start with the first team, because obviously those are the snaps that we're paying the most attention to. First team offense and first team defense. I think Andy Reid admitted both sides he felt were a little flat and was expecting more from the starters in this one, considering it was their first taste of game action since the Super Bowl in Arizona. I want to get your initial reactions on the first team and what you thought, what you saw in those few series that they had.
Yeah, I think it's really hard to take much from this game, especially from an offensive perspective. I mean, the first 4 plays involved CEH touching the ball. So that's when I knew that they were very unserious in the game plan.
Really?
4 plays in a row to start the game to CEH, that will never happen in any regular season game this season. You can book that right now. He's not getting 4 straight plays to start a game. Never. So that right there was a telltale sign to me that maybe they're trying to boost his stock potentially. Maybe that's part of it. Give him the ball and hopefully he can do a couple things against the Saints first team, and maybe a team's, maybe I'll throw a 6th or 7th round pick in there if you want to offer it. I don't know. But that was a very strange start to me. Mahomes didn't throw a ball past 10 yards. So, I mean, what can I really take from the offense to start the game here? But one thing I will say is in limited snaps and just all around, not even the first team, but the first, second, and third team offensive lines. I thought the offensive line was really good throughout the game. You saw clips. I don't know if you saw, but yeah, it's been pretty much all over now with Donovan Smith. He had a couple plays. He had a pancake. He had this one play where he was sweeping out to the right and finished the guy, just showing that athleticism. That's something that I don't think we really had with Orlando Brown, which is something I think the Chiefs are excited about. Last year, he was injured in Tampa Bay. He still played through it, but he clearly wasn't the same guy that he was 2 years ago when the Bucs did beat the Chiefs in the Super Bowl. So I think that was encouraging. Juwan Taylor looked good because it's all about the tackles. I mean, I think we all agree that the interior offensive line is, if not the best in the league, one of the best. So not really worried about those guys, but just those tackle spots. And I thought they played pretty good from the limited snaps that I saw. Are we touching on the defense right now too? Or you want to chime in on that?
Yeah, because to me, the defense, and then going down 14-0, right? Derek Carr's drive, Jameis Winston's drive. Like, I understand Chris Jones is not in there, but I more so evaluated, or I'm more so taking away kind of the flatness that we saw from Kansas City's defense more so than the offense. At times we've seen KC's offense be flat with the starters being there, with the ones last year, with so many new faces, a complex offense, a lot of the young guys trying to figure out what the offense is. For the defense to go out there and basically get steamrolled by Derek Carr and company, I agree. It's more of a mentality thing, right? It seemed like they weren't ready to play from snap number one, which to me is something that we're not used to seeing from the Chiefs, offense or defense.
Yeah, but one thing I will say is there's a very little game planning that goes into these preseason games from both sides, if any at all. Really, as far as your opponent goes, you're more focused on what you're doing. You're not really looking at the tendencies of a Chris Olave or Derek Carr, even though you played Derek Carr throughout the last 10 years or so. So you do know him, but it's a new system that he's in now in New Orleans. So you're not really game planning for your opponent. So that's one thing I will say. The offense should have an advantage in these matchups, especially when the rules are catered to the offense anyway. So that's another added advantage they have with very little game planning going into these games. But I will say I was a little concerned about Justin Reed. There was a few times where he got beat on one-on-one coverage. Didn't look too well, but his coverage skills has never been his strong point. He's more of a box safety, a hard-hitting guy that comes down, but you still want to see him have better reps than what we saw this past Saturday. But I don't think it's nothing that you should overreact to. Like you said, no Chris Jones, and don't forget no L'Jarius Sneed as well.
You mentioned knowing tendencies and that kind of thing. One guy who knows the tendencies of the Kansas City Chiefs, it's Colin Saunders, who's now in New Orleans. I thought his post-game comments were very interesting, very funny. This guy is a press room monster, if you will. This is what he had to say after facing off against the Chiefs in preseason week number 1.
So fun. It really felt like practice. Like it just really, I felt like I saw a lot of the plays that I'm used to seeing. I was out there calling out some stuff and kind of cheating a little bit, but it ain't cheating because I know them. So, but no, it was fun. Get to talk to those guys too, like before and after the game, and because like I said in my introductory press conference here, like I'm a big team guy. I'm a treat those guys like my brothers. I still talk to those guys daily, and so it was good to kind of reconnect with them and share sentiments and all of that stuff like that. But yeah, they also know who I am, and they know that I'm a team guy, so they know I take the Saints seriously, and it's not like oh man, I wish I can be back. Like no, love y'all to death, but I'm a Saint, and so that's how it is now.
Really cool to see Saunders in his new environment. Wish him the best there. Also cool to see Tyrann Mathieu and just kind of the reconnection and the love that those guys still have for the kingdom here. But going back to some of the first team struggles that we were going, the 4th and 1 in the short yardage situations, that's a perfect opportunity where, and I know you're going to shake your head and say, oh, it's preseason, these things don't matter. These are reps, and I tweeted this out in the moment. These are reps and game speed reps that cannot be replicated in a practice or camp style environment. Yes, I know you're not game planning. Yes, I know you're not really prepping the same way you would going into a regular season. But 4th and 1, a situation that we've seen the Chiefs offense face time and time again, they failed. So I'm going to judge them off what they put on tape, and Colin Saunders was a big reason why they failed in that situation.
Yeah, and I may surprise you here. I actually am pretty disappointed in that sequence. Because it's something like you said, it's something that has reared its ugly head over and over again. And it's very frustrating for an offense that is explosive as the Kansas City Chiefs. On 4th and 1, they decide to go to the most basic play, that's the most predictable play in the playbook, up the middle on a tight end sneak. Like, we know it's coming. Everybody know it's coming, and they continue to do it over and over again. So, yes, it is preseason. Hopefully that was just a trial run to see, hey, let's see, does it work this year? And then we're not really going to try this in a real game. So that's what I'm really hoping that's the case because, yeah, I'm at the point now, just put the ball in Mahomes' hands. If you're going to do that, if that's the play you're going to do, I'd rather Mahomes go out on a little bootleg when he has the option to either run or just pass a little dump off to Travis Kelce or something like that and get the first down.
I'm with you on that, and it seems like they have pretty much staked their ground in never running a true traditional quarterback sneak ever again. I'm going to touch on this a little bit later in the podcast because I feel like for Kansas City to have one of the most explosive offenses in the league. They have like a 3-man playbook or a 3-play playbook when it comes to 4th and 1 or like short yardage situations. But that was definitely one of the first team failures, if you will. We're talking about a preseason week number 1 storylines. Got a couple people rocking with us in the chat already. Jay Cruz has lots of things to work on coming out of that week number 1, including Justin Reed's play. And then On the Money says it was practice. Chiefs weren't even remotely trying to win. I don't know about that. I think the third quarter effort is definitely something that you could be encouraged about if you're the Chiefs, if you're a Chiefs fan. I mean, what was it, 21 unanswered or something like that coming out of the locker room? And I mean, they had the game all but one. Let's spotlight, if we could, and you were very active on X about this topic, some risers and fallers. We're on the cusp of the last day of camp. It's kind of crazy already to say that, but Chiefs will break camp on Thursday from Missouri Western in St. Joe. So with one preseason game in the book and another on the horizon, 2 more on the horizon, who are your biggest risers and fallers, in your opinion, you see from that game in New Orleans?
I would say one of the biggest risers, I think I have to start with Justin Ross. I know he just had 2 catches, but the fact, and we always talked about this on the pod, I just want to see him take a real hit and get up and still be fine. You know, the guy hasn't played a real football game in about 3 years. So I was really encouraged by that first catch. He actually broke a tackle, got some yak. And then obviously the touchdown that broke Twitter. Good route there, good hands. And, you know, anytime there's anything positive with Justin Ross, I mean, we see it just in practice. You know, any Justin Ross content, you're going to get those impressions up. So shout out to those guys out there chasing the bag from Elon Musk. But I think he's definitely one of them. Just you got to say him, just the fact he hasn't played in a while. And then I would say, what about Nikko? I mean, I know he got hurt in practice, unfortunately, a couple of days ago. Hopefully that's nothing too serious. But I think Nikko really impressed, especially in that second half. You know, we talk about this receiver room all the time. Are they going to keep 6, 7, maybe 8, right? Like Nikko is one of those guys where it's kind of hard to not put him on the team. There, you know, there's been talk about, you know, I've even tweeted this about Justin Watson.
You're the only one talking about that. There hasn't been talk about it.
True.
You're the one
that's
talking
not
about
true.
it.
It's been all over Chiefs Twitter. It's been a topic of conversation. You even made a funny tweet talking about Chiefs Kingdom with Justin Watson, throwing him away like the Toy Story meme. So you know it's been talked about. Don't do that. But yeah, we'll get into that, I'm sure. But yeah, I think he definitely adds pressure. But now since he got hurt, the question is, maybe in a weird way, the Chiefs can keep him now because you can put him on the IR and you can stash him on the practice squad. I don't think he would have made it through waivers if he didn't make this team. So I think those are 2 of the main guys defensively. As far as fallers, I mean, it's hard to say this guy because we know he's going to play an intricate part in the team. But Justin Reed, like I mentioned earlier, did not impress me at all. I think this is a big year for him. I think many believe this could be his best year on paper because this is the first time in his career in the NFL he's had the same defensive coordinator for back-to-back seasons. He never had that in Houston. And now you would think he's at his physical peak. He's 27, 28 years old, just come off a Super Bowl championship. He's in a young DB room, but he's clearly the older statesman there. So everything is lined up for him to have a career year. So I don't think that was the best start, but it was just a preseason game, so I'm not going to put too much stock into that. But yeah, I don't really see too many fallers. It's kind of hard for me to say that right now, but I do think some guys did raise their stock, like I mentioned.
I wouldn't say this guy is necessarily a faller, but I think we've definitely come back to earth on our Deneric Prince hype. 4 carries for 14 yards in the loss against the Saints in preseason week number 1. And I was at training camp practice today. He's the 3rd or the 4th guy getting touches now, as opposed to the 2nd or the 3rd guy getting touches in the Chiefs offense. We know Isaiah Pacheco didn't play in that game. I thought Deneric Prince was a guy who could potentially take, you know, the starting role in some of these preseason games, considering just how much work he had gotten, how high the talk was coming into the game. I expected more than 14 yards. I'm not going to say he's falling off the face of the earth, but he's somebody that I think maybe we're starting to realize what his role is actually going to be and something that we can monitor going into this Cardinals game. I'm not saying he's not going to make the 53 or anything like that, but the arrow is not pointed up necessarily after the first game for Deneric Prince. And then I would say my big riser is not Justin Ross. It's another wide receiver. Richie James, how about his offseason? He comes over from the New York Giants as far as that guy. We've talked on this pod about maybe he's the 6'7", maybe he's the 5'6", maybe he's one of those guys that needs to make a big role on special teams potentially to be able to earn a role on this team. 3 targets, 2 catches, 44 yards, and the score, the long one for 43. And really, he should have had a second touchdown. There was a couple. There was a pass in the back of the end zone. Blaine Gabbert kind of missed him there. Richie James, to me, had the strongest showing of any of the wide receivers in this game. I like Remigio as well, but I put it in this context, especially when you're talking about the whole Justin Watson thing, right? Why is Justin Watson against the ones being measured against Nikko Remigio against 3s and 4s in New Orleans? Like, he's playing against guys who aren't even really going to be Saints potentially, Mark. He's playing against guys who will potentially be Battlehawks before they'll be Saints. Like, come on, let's have some real context here. We're talking about what Remigio did. Yes, I think while it's unfortunate, I hope the shoulder situation works out and he's healthy and he can come back and contribute for this team. It could potentially surplus and benefit KC later if they can keep him on the team. But let's come back down there. Can we not give him the gold jacket just yet?
No, I don't think nobody's giving him the gold jacket. I think it's more anti-Justin Watson. I don't think it has nothing to do with this preseason game as far as he is concerned. I think it's about the upside. I think we know who Justin Watson is at this point in his career. I don't think he's going to get that much better. I think when you see a guy like Nikko, you see some more pop there. You see some more athleticism. And if you're talking about a wide receiver 6 or 5 or 6 or 7, I'm going to go with the guy that has the higher upside, not the guy that I'm more comfortable with, because you're a wide receiver 6 or 7 anyway. So why would I care about comfortability at that point where you're going to have limited snaps to be?
Because you're playing in a complicated offense that has a different language. This is a guy who's been a pro before. He's shown an ability to grasp the system. Remember when things were going crazy in the AFC title game and guys couldn't even get lined up correctly, right? Who's getting them lined up right? 84. He might not be the best or fastest guy on the team. He may not be the guy with the highest upside and the highest ceiling. But as far as knowledge of the system, as far as trust and comfortability with the quarterback, which is another thing you haven't talked about, 27 is not catching passes from 15. Remember that. He has not caught a pass from 15 yet. I want to echo what our guy Nate Taylor said. Move him up. Have him play with the 2s now. Remigio has obviously proved that he's a guy as far as a playmaker. Let's have him play with the 2s. Let's have him play with the 1. Get him a couple stats with Mahomes. But as far as throwing him on the 53-man roster, I'm not going there yet. And that's even before the shoulder injury. Let's move a little bit.
Yeah, now it's a moot point. But
yeah, we're still rolling through our preseason game number 1 analysis. Mark Gunnels is getting his Nikko Remigio jersey etched up right now. But we want to grade some of our first-time Chiefs or Chiefs debut. I don't know if you can count these as debuts, but I guess it's our first time seeing them in game action for KC. And these can be kind of quick because we have spent some time on this game. You mentioned Donovan Smith, and there was a good article on Arrowhead Pride by our friend Rocky. He talks about, Ron Kopp. He talked about Donovan Smith's debut, and I'll read just a little bit of it. He says the 3 clips give an understanding of how well he moves, especially compared to Orlando Brown. He covers ground more quickly, especially because of how fast he gets out on the edge rusher or how fluid his movement is in the run game. Give me your grade for Donovan Smith in preseason game number 1.
I mean, I'm going to give him an A. I don't think he had enough time to lower his grade. Maybe if he played a full 4-quarter games, his grade would be lower because more snaps, obviously more opportunity for some slip-ups. But in the limited time, I didn't see anything wrong. He didn't give up no pressures. He had a pancake. He had some good blocks on the rollouts. So yeah, I think he deserves an A.
Felix Anudike Uzama, the kid taken from KC out of K-State, defensive player of the year in the Big 12 last year, gets a couple snaps in New Orleans against the Saints. I will say that he is a B for his first performance, and these are just ancillary ratings. I thought this was a guy that the Chiefs were during training camp and kind of mandatory mini camp, especially with the thumb issue coming in. They were basically like, yo, it'll take some time, but he'll be ready when it's crunch time. As the weather changes, we expect his game to start to change a little bit. I thought he played well. I thought he showed some flashes of what he did at K-State. Kind of had just that, the pressure laid and that kind of thing. I expect him to play, and you tweeted about this as well, him and George Karlaftis being kind of those young guys off the edge. He showed us in limited, obviously, preseason capabilities what he's possible of, but I thought it was a good performance for him.
Yeah, I feel like a very easy grader here, but I'm giving him an A as well.
An A as well?
I mean, but I know people have their gripes with PFF, so take it whatever how you want to, but he was the highest graded rookie edge throughout the first week of preseason. He had multiple pressures in that game, and I'm thinking I'm grading based off of expectation as well, because he's a guy that I expected to kind of ease his way in, maybe be a slow starter, and he still could be. It's just one preseason game and limited snaps. But I didn't expect him to flash that much in his first NFL game action. So based on my expectations, he well surpassed that. And he's going to have to, especially with Charles Omenihu being suspended for the first 6 games this year. So I think we're going to see him in the fire a lot more than probably he would have if it wasn't for that expansion for Omenihu.
I'll give my A to, and maybe in the future I'll have to give out 1A, 1B, and 1C, so you don't just give A's across the board, Mr. Chiefs fan.
I mean, why would I give you a C if you don't deserve a C, though? Like, you can't just force me to give a grade. You know how this works.
I'll give my A to Rashee Rice, who rookie out of SMU, second-round draft pick. His final stat line was 4 targets, 3 catches, 30 yards, longest of those being 13. But I tweeted out, he looked comfortable, man. Like, I know a lot of times, and maybe I'm picking on Sky Moore a little bit last year, but, like, there were times where I could tell he looked uncomfortable. To me, Rashee Rice, when he lined up in the huddle, he knew where he was in the formation. He ran his route with comfortability. He knew what to do after the catch. Like, to me, especially going from mandatory minicamp, seeing him in that, seeing him in training camp, and now seeing him in preseason play, you can see the development. So for him, and obviously he got to continue to build on it, I'll give him an A for his first performance.
Okay, so I'm not going to give an A here. I'm going to give him a B, and that's only because he did have that one drop, which was a routine play. But the reason why he still gets a B is because he didn't let that play affect the rest of his game, and that's what I really admire, especially from a young guy. Can you take that mistake, learn from it, and be better the next time? Don't let that one mistake turn into 2 mistakes, 3 mistakes. And maybe that's something you're referring to with Sky Moore, even though it was more on the return game for him, in my opinion, with the drop punts. He did have some stuff in the receiving game as well. Him and Mahomes weren't on the same page, so he did run some bad routes, I'm sure, as well. But I think for Rice, I agree with you. He does look very comfortable, and I'm starting to come around on he really may be that rookie that kind of breaks the Andy Reid curse for rookie wide receivers.
Ooh.
And he may have a bigger impact on his offense in year 1 than I may have initially gave him credit for.
Let's take a break before we go into our grab bag. I'm about to adjust my lighting real quick. We'll be back.
Yeah, I was going to mention that too. Oh, sir, sorry, I just saw your message. Has it been bad this whole time?
Yeah, it has been, actually.
Has it really?
No, I don't think so. You're fine.
Chiefs
Coast to Coast, episode 52, Arrowhead Pride Podcast Network. Aaron Ladd here in KC. Steven Serta behind the board. Mark Gunnels, the biggest Taylor Swift fan we know, is in LA. It's nice and bright here in KC right now. Let's touch on a couple injury updates, because a lot has happened since the last time we podded. Have been doing the bi-weekly pods in the offseason here. Jody Fortson is placed on injured reserve, meaning his 2023 season is over. It was a shoulder injury to my knowledge, and I believe he posted on Instagram saying that he already had surgery. The surgery was successful, and that he looks forward to a healthy and prosperous next time he touches on the football field. Tough loss. Obviously, a guy who's a big body target in the red zone. And when we sat down and talked this offseason, he had big goals for this year. Tough to see it in this way for Fortson.
Yeah, very unfortunate, man. Talk about a guy that's had a lot of bad luck during his career. A guy that I've been high on in the past as far as his potential. And why not? I mean, the guy's 6'5", 6'6", super athletic. You know, you were hoping that he could be maybe that Tony. So I was gonna say Tony Gonzalez, but Travis Kelce kind of replacement potentially. But when they drafted Noah Gray, I think that was kind of an insurance plan policy there, just in case Jody Fortson didn't turn into that guy. And you know, it's not that he didn't turn into that guy; he just can't stay healthy. So definitely hoping for a speedy recovery. But this may have been his time up in Kansas City, unfortunately.
You mentioned your boy Nikko Remigio after his big showing, 6 targets, 4 catches, 71 yards in the loss to the Saints. He goes down with a shoulder injury as well, was not at practice today. That is Wednesday, August 16th. It's a watch and wait situation. And as you mentioned, it could potentially benefit him if he ends up as an IR stash. But part of that mismatch, competitive wide receiver room for Kansas City entering 2023.
Yeah. And like we mentioned earlier, for the Chiefs' perspective, as long as it's not, obviously, we don't want it to be a very serious injury, but now you could potentially put him on the IR, and he's a guy that you could stash on the practice squad. And if something happens throughout the season, I mean, we saw last year in the AFC title game, they got to the point where they were banking on Marcus Kemp to get first downs. So you never know what injuries can happen to that room. So just having him in the stash could be beneficial later in the season if guys get banged up.
I'm going to be honest. I'm starting to get nervous about L'Jarius Sneed and his knee inflammation. His last practice was July 31st, did not play against the Saints. And I talked about this locally here on 610 radio. It sounds like an issue that Kansas City is going to be monitoring throughout the year. I'm not really worried about him missing preseason action because we know this guy is going to strap it up and be ready to play with limited practice time. And he's done that in the past in the regular season. But if this is something that continues to be an issue, it gives me pause, Mark. I don't know how you feel about that.
Yeah, it's actually funny you bring it up today because today was like probably the first time that I really started getting concerned for some reason, because with knees, it can be tricky, man, especially when you got swelling there, nothing to play with. So the fact that he hasn't practiced in going on 3 weeks here, I think that is kind of concerning. I think you'll be pretty naive to not admit that at this point. And especially when you have such a young DB room. Thankfully, they did have the ultimate experience last year of going all the way to the Super Bowl and winning. So you couldn't ask for a better rookie experience for those guys heading into year 2. But still, just having him there, your best corner, he's so versatile. Spags throws them all around the field. Guy that has a complete understanding of what Spags expects from that position is definitely concerning. And I'm hoping that he can be ready by week 1 against the Lions, because that's a very explosive offense the Chiefs are going to face week 1.
And then finally, Isaiah Pacheco, the second-year running back out of Rutgers, had the offseason surgeries on the broken hand and the torn labrum. This is from Arrowhead Pride's article of some of these injuries and a roundup on them. It says recovery on a torn labrum is usually 6 months, which would have him cleared for full contact around August 20th, this upcoming Sunday. Chiefs will probably test him in practice before pushing him into any preseason or anything like that. But I'm not worried about Pacheco, and they have a solid room behind him. Just wanted to give an update on him.
Yeah, I have no concerns there at all.
This next one is your department. This is your area of expertise. This is probably what you should have graduated from Lincoln in. Cryptic tweets, a bachelor's in cryptic tweets or something like that.
Can you major in that now? Is that a thing?
You should teach some of the coursework there.
Hey, I might. Hey, let's see what the bag's looking like first.
Chris Jones has not been in St. Joe, and if I had to put any money on it, probably won't, with only one very quick practice remaining for the world champions. But he's been very active on social media, whether you want to call it Twitter or X. He actually replied to Show and BK's I want to say it was like the teaser for their latest episode, and was talking about how they still have no faith, or they still have no worry that Chris Jones will show up and will play regular season games. I believe his reply to that was, "That's what you hope." And then this one also caught me off guard. Now, there's been a lot of these, so I'm just kind of picking through a few of them. I'm sure Mark has one that he likes as well, but Chris Jones says, "Stay strong and carry on." And a fan named Holly replies and says, "Chris, this cryptic tweeting is making me nuts. Okay. It's probably making me nuts. I just need a yes or no, preferably a yes." Chris Jones replies, "I'm under contract for 1 more year. I'm no fortune teller. Let's just enjoy this year," with the trophy emoji. Yeah, the runway is clear for you on how you're feeling about contract negotiations, and if these latest tweets add anything to what you're feeling.
No, not really. I think a lot of this is coming from his agent. I think they're just playing negotiation tactics at this point. I think it's all a mind game. I don't think for fans it's something that you should really stress about too much. Obviously, there's an offer on the table, I believe. I think just the structure, it needs to be tweaked from Chris Jones' side. I think right now they're playing a game of standoff right now. They're trying to wait and see who's going to budge first. Is it going to be Brett Veach, or is it going to be Chris Jones and his team? Because obviously week 1 is coming up. I think we both agree he's not going to miss any game checks. He is under contract for this season, so I do expect him to be there against the Detroit Lions. But the conversation is, will the contract extension be done prior to that game? And right now, I hate to give such a cop-out answer, but I'm really 50-50 right now, Aaron.
Yellow light Gunnels in the building.
I'm really conflicted, man. I can see both sides. I can see a world where, they get a deal done. Brett Veach maybe caves in a little bit, and he just wants to keep his guy there for the next 3 or 4 years. And I can see a world where Veach has his number. He has his structure. He's not coming off of it. And Chris Jones and this team, or maybe still be a little stubborn, and they don't take it. And he plays his last year out, and we'll see what happens in the offseason. I'm really torn, Aaron. I don't know where you're at on this, but that's where I am right now.
At this point, mindsets have to be changed on both sides. I think when we started these negotiations, or when we started these conversations after the Super Bowl, we're like, oh man, Depoy candidate, he pencil him in for another 15 sack season. Like, I'm not worried about an extension. And here we are on the heels of preseason game number 2. And there's really the heels have dug in even more. I think it's interesting that you mentioned Chris and his team, because I think that plays an important part in this. And my buddy Nick Jacobs, who works at KSHB 41, does an amazing job with a bunch of our Chiefs coverage. You've watched our pre and post game show this past week. That was all produced by him solo. So I want to shout out him for his work. But he tweeted this, and I think it adds a little bit more context to this whole Chris Jones situation. Players on active NFL rosters represented by the Katz brothers, who are Chris Jones's current representatives. He says Chris Jones, Jody Fortson, Keith Kirkwood, Olamide Zaccheaus, former Falcons legend, Demarcus Robinson, Byron Pringle, Shandon Sullivan, and Jordan Mason. So I think that tweet, if I'm not putting words in Nick's mouth, but I'm going to go on good authority, and I understand what he's saying with this tweet, is Chris Jones is their big white whale. Chris Jones is their blue chip client, if you will. This contract and this deal and how it's negotiated and the compensation that they get off of this deal is going to be very important for the future of their agency. So I think not only do they understand that, I think that's how they're moving with this negotiation. And I think that's kind of been their strategy throughout how this whole thing goes, is that we have a number and we're sticking to it. We don't care if Brett Veach doesn't pay top of end market money. We don't care if Brett Veach has said this and that. You are the best defensive player in all of football, and this is our number. And we're not doing anything until we get this number. It's a dangerous proposition, because we're sitting here under a month now away from the first game, and I don't know if Chris Jones is in football shape. Joe Cullen took the podium today at training camp and said that they still talk. Joe Cullen is the Chiefs defensive line coach, joined the organization last year. And when him and Chris have a great relationship, and he says, I'm texting him all the time and I'm telling him, like, yo, we need you. Yo, hope you're ready. Hope you're staying ready. Because we all saw what that Chiefs defense looks like without Chris Jones. And I'm starting to get nervous on more of if he shows up than a when he shows up.
Yeah, and I think you made a great point. And shout out to Mr. Jacobs there, your teammate at 41. I think that tweet was great because Chris Jones is the breadwinner there. He's the guy that's everybody's eating off of in the family. He's the one that people are asking, "Hey man, can I hold 10, bro? I got you back next week, man. Let me hold something, bro." He's the distant cousin like you haven't heard from in a while. Now people hitting him up like, "Hey, what's up, cousin?" Like he's that guy in that agency. So this is a big negotiation for them. This is going to shape probably how their agency is going to be moving forward. So I understand from their perspective why they're being so gun-ho on whatever that number may be. We've seen numbers floated out, 31, 32. Does he want to get paid more than Aaron Donald potentially? I mean, that's been a thing that's been floated around. So it's going to be interesting because we know Brett Veach is he can be stubborn sometimes. We saw what he did with the Tyreek Hill situation. He has a number. He doesn't really move off of it. And it's kind of the Patriot way, if you would, Aaron. Throughout all those years when Tom Brady was there, how often do we hear they just let quality guys go? And then you just like, what are they doing there? And they just kept winning because they still had Belichick. They still had Brady, still had Gronk. Is this a situation where is Chris Jones not viewed as a part of that top core? Is he not in there with the Patrick Mahomes, the Travis Kelce's? Or is he just a step outside of that door? I think we're going to find out very soon because I'll tell you right now, if this was Mahomes' team or Travis Kelce's team, there would be no argument. You get whatever you want. But we'll see what happens with Chris Jones, man.
Let's get to our Chiefs preview.
Stop it. You can't do this. You can't escape. You can't make these plays. You can't make these throws.
Come on, give us a sneak preview.
Chiefs preview.
We are rolling merrily along through episode 52 and through the preseason. Chiefs will head to Glendale, Arizona, a very familiar place for the World Champion Chiefs. Of course, obviously, that's where they won the Super Bowl over the Philadelphia Eagles last time they were in this building. I want to put like some sage or something in the air for the field, the playing surface that has been discussed ad nauseum since the last time the Chiefs played there. Hopefully, it's much better than the last time they played there, but this surface is not only used for playing games, but also the Cardinals have their training camp practices on the same field as well. So I'm sure it's in tip-top shape. Saturday, August 19th, 8 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Kansas City time from Glendale, Arizona. Chiefs and Cardinals. Very simple, Mark. What do you want to see from the Chiefs in game 2 of the preseason? We know it's just a 3-game preseason now, so your dress rehearsal or your starters playing a little bit longer, maybe that gets moved up a little bit more. We're keeping our eye on the 53-man roster. The roster cut downs are also different this year for the first time. What do you have your eye on entering this matchup against the Cardinals?
Well, before I actually get into the game, one thing I'm curious about, and you mentioned it in your opening there, is the field. And typically the second game, especially now since there's only 3 instead of 4 preseason games, the second game is when you see your starters play the most. But unfortunately, this second game just happens to be on that field. So it puts the Chiefs in a weird spot here. Do you still go based on how you normally go in a typical second preseason game and have the starters play however long you would normally do? Or do you cut that back a little bit considering the place you're playing at in this game? I kind of am curious to hear your thoughts on that. If you're Andy Reid, do you let that affect how you go about playing time in this game?
I don't know. Dave Tobe, Chiefs special teams coordinator and assistant head coach, was kind of asked about how he thinks the field will be holding up by the time they get there. I don't know if it was a political answer. I don't know if it was actually how he feels, but he says he has faith. He feels like it'll be different because obviously they used the golf grass for the Super Bowl last time out. This time, kind of going back to the traditional surface that the Cardinals are used to playing and practicing on. For me, if you're asking starters play time, I would like to see what Andy Reid promises the first time around. Give me a full quarter. And if it's one of those things where the offense is in the middle of a drive as the quarter ends out. Let them finish out that drive. But at this point in time, especially based off what that first preseason game and the performance that y'all put on tape the first time out, I got to see something better, man. And specifically, I got to see success in short yardage. Show me some creativity on 4th and short or 3rd and short. Don't line up in an I formation. Don't line up in something with the tight end under center and you're motioning. Like, give me 4 wide and Mahomes scrambles. Give me the corn dog, or give me like the snow globe play, or give me something that mirrors your traditional offense in 4th and in short yardage. I don't know why. And maybe this is because I'm not a coach and I'm just a guy who podcasts and does TV, but I don't know why KC treats short yardage situations like it's a completely different game than they're treating the rest of the game. Like it's almost a little bit of an overthinking from my perspective. Yeah. If those situations come up again here in preseason game number 2, I want to see success in short yardage for KC.
Yeah, and for me, assuming the starters do play at least a quarter in this game, which I think they ultimately will, I want to see more of Deneric Prince, a guy that you mentioned earlier. You know, he's been a camp darling, to say the least, a guy that people have been really high on. I want to see more of that burst. I think in that first game, I think it was more of him overthinking instead of just actually hitting the hole and going. I don't think it had anything to do with his actual game speed. So hopefully with more reps in this second game, the game starts to slow down for him and you see him pop a little bit more on the screen. And I also want to see him more in the passing game. We didn't get to see that in New Orleans. That's been one thing that we've been hearing about throughout camp is he's a guy that can catch the ball out the backfield as well. So I want to see a little bit more of that. Just more of the offensive line play, some more continuity there, just continuing to stack more good reps based on what they did last week. And I want to see Mahomes actually throw a ball past 10 yards in this game.
Well, let's stick with the quarterbacks because people were very impressed with, speak of a camp darling, how about preseason darling Shane Buechele? The last few seasons, big game Shane has showed up in a big way. If you take away the interception, I thought he was flawless in the game against New Orleans. And it has people talking. I'm looking on the timelines. I'm looking on the Twitters. I'm looking on social media. People think big game Shane should be QB2 entering this season over potentially a guy they brought in from Tampa Bay in Missouri Tiger standout Blaine Gabbert. What do you think, man? Is it because in my perspective, I don't think there's anything that he could do in the preseason that could really change the depth chart on how it looks. I think no matter how much Shane plays his ass off, Blaine was brought in under the premise of being that steady veteran presence, a la Chad Henne last year. But there's going to be a point here where if Shane keeps putting some of those scramble plays like we saw in New Orleans that's got Mahomes fired up on the sideline, like at a certain point, the coaches are going to have to take notice, and there may be something here. What do you think?
Yeah, this is all Chiefs Twitter talk. Nothing more, nothing less. There's no way. What you gonna say?
And finally.
No, this is all hoopla. Blaine Gabbert is QB2. This is not even a discussion inside of one Arrowhead drive. I can guarantee you that. Like you mentioned, they brought in Blaine Gabbert to be QB2, to be that Chad Henne. The guy has played the last couple of years behind Tom Brady. So I would imagine he's learned a lot of good things during that time, taking notes here and there behind the GOAT. And, you know, if Mahomes, and knock on wood, Mahomes isn't needed, or Mahomes doesn't get hurt to where you're needing your backup quarterback to play, I think Blaine Gabbert is a solid QB2, man. I think people are really getting too high because they saw the flash in Shane Buechele, and it was kind of more like a Mahomes-esque type of play style. But Chad Henne was not that type of guy. He's a guy that just comes in there, knows the playbook, makes the reads, finds the open guy. He's not going to scramble around, put the ball in harm's way. And I think that's going to be a similar thing if Blaine Gabbert ever has to come into the game. Just somebody that's steady. I don't need the flash and the high-risk plays because you're not Patrick Mahomes. So, yeah, you pulled that off, but it was preseason as well against backups. So I'm yellow light ladding the Shane hype, the big game Shane. He doesn't deserve no nickname for a preseason. Get out of here with that.
This isn't his first time doing that. And I do think it's funny. Like, Mahomes obviously is an ad lib backyard quarterback guy. And then the last, since he's come in and been a starter, like the second guy is nothing like that. He's more of a like stationary, like a very traditional pocket passer type.
Like
I
Matt
do wonder,
Moore.
I do wonder when when the QB2 and 3 just all turn into like Mahomes prototypes. Like Shane has a little bit more of that in his game. It's almost like for the yin and yang for Andy Reid. Like he'll roll and he'll live with Mahomes and all the ad libs and the stuff that he does, because obviously it's amazing and the ceiling is so great. But he also, part of him in the back of his mind knows that he needs to have like a field general, stable, like traditional type quarterback there. So I think that's fun. No controversy here. We're both out on that here on Coast to Coast. Let's head down to Vegas.
Place your bets.
Oh, there it is. There it is. 2 touchdowns. Win by at least 2.
Let's go to Vegas with Mark.
Oh, man, he's been working indeed. I saw you on Instagram Reels handing out some winners. Mark is in Vegas, and Mark is in full effect. These are advanced futures that we're looking at for the NFL season coming up. Mark Gunnels has been handing out winners all off season long, and he's got another one here on episode 52. Mark Gunnels, take it away.
Yeah, so you can get this on FanDuel. I know that's a very popular site for you kids out there, all you degenerates going on FanDuel, crossing the border and going to Kansas and putting your plays in. Shout out to you guys out there in the metro. But on FanDuel, if you go on there, you type in NFL, hit on NFL, go to Kansas City Chiefs specials. You can get the over on Chiefs wins at 13.5 at plus 250. The Chiefs have won 14 games, 2 of the last 3 seasons. With that extra game, obviously that helps a lot. And you look at their schedule, while it looks difficult on the surface, I do think this will be the first time in the Mahomes era they have a top 10 defense. So when I consider that, with them having one of the best offenses in the league once again, I think winning 14 games is definitely within the realm of possibility. And then with plus money, I think you have to take it there. I love the odds, because if you took them down, let's say you want the Chiefs at over 12.5, it's minus 165. So why not go one more game up and get it at plus 250 when they've done it 2 of the last 3 seasons? So I like this play a lot.
I like the value here, but this is one of those plays that makes me nervous because 14 wins, Mark. I know it's happened 2 of the last 3 years. That's rare air when you're talking about NFL teams. It's hard to string that many wins together. KC's played the most games of any NFL team since 2018. That's a lot of wear and tear on the body. And a lot of these are 1-score games. I think the stat is like something close to like 65 or 70% of the games in the entire league are decided by 1 score or less. Ooh, they could win 13 games and you would be crushed, right? You'd be hurt.
But it's a value play, though. It's about the odds here. At plus money, I think it's worth a little sprinkle.
Absolutely. Mark Gunnels has got your play here. Chiefs over 13.5 wins, plus 250 on FanDuel. Make sure to give Mark a little cut, right? Like, we got to put your like Cash App, or if you handing out so much free money on our platform, man, y'all got to help him out, man. Y'all got to remember who got you there. Mark Gunnels from Vegas. Thank you so much for that one. We have a voicemail here we want to get to as we wrap up episode 52 here on Chiefs Coast to Coast. A very important question coming from Patrick on voicemail. What you got for us, Patrick?
Lloyd calling from Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. My question is for my old friend Aaron Ladd. Aaron, I'm wondering about the quarterback battle here. You know, we've heard over the last few years about, Burrow versus Mahomes, and that debate can be had, of course. But my question for you is kind of off the field when it comes to these two guys. Who do you think has more drip? Would love to hear your thoughts, guys.
I didn't know this was Patrick Lloyd.
Guy?
Oh, my goodness. Wow. We used to work together at WNBF, the NBC station in Myrtle Beach. This guy is hilarious, man. That's small world. Going to his actual question, who has more drip? I don't know. I'll say this about Pat, right? So, he does like the comfy stuff for the home games, and then like he'll do like the business trip look for the road games. I think when he does the business trip look, and obviously, $500 million man, the 3-piece suits and all that, it's hard to compete with him when it comes to Taylor, when it comes to the suit, shirt, tie combination. When he wants to put it together, he can. Now, when he comes to the home games looking like, West Texas oil money who just rolled out of bed, I can't vouch for that. But I'll go Pat on this one because I'm not familiar with Burrows a lot. I remember the pink thing from the AFC Championship game last year, and I didn't really like that.
Nah, Burrow does have some drip though. I ain't gonna play him like that. Joe Cool, he definitely he comes together, but he doesn't. I never seen him with the professional look though, like what Mahomes brings. Mahomes it just looks super clean, classy. But I think you're sleeping on his streetwear attire for the home games. I think you're sleeping on it, bro. Like he'll come to the game with a Kansas City Monarchs jersey or something like that, looking cool with the
publicist laid it out. Salute the publicist. Yeah,
with the Oakley shades. He's sponsored by Oakley. Shout out to Oakley. I mean, I think you're sleeping on a streetwear game, man.
The real question for everybody watching at home is who has more drip between Mark and I? That's the real question here. Mark Gunnels with 3 buttons in his shirt, maybe unbuttoned all the way down to the belly button.
I'm buttoned up today, man.
I'm proud of you. This is actually a clean look for you.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate it, man. I knew you would appreciate it.
Let's update the audience on our recording schedule as we inch closer to the regular season.
Shout out to Patrick, your boy.
Thank you, Pat Lloyd, for that. I'm going to have to shoot him a message. He's a Jacksonville Jaguars fan, so I'm surprised he hasn't asked a Jags question. Our next episode will be August 30th, and then guess what? After that, we will be switching back to our weekly recording schedule for the regular season. Our next episode, August 30th, 6 o'clock on Arrowhead Pride podcast channels. And then our next episode after that will be September 6th, the day before the NFL kickoff at Arrowhead Stadium. World champion Kansas City Chiefs and the Detroit Lions coming in trying to dethrone them.
Quick, yes or no? I'm putting you on the spot right before we end. By the time we come back on, is a Chris Jones deal done?
No. For Mark Gunnels out in LA, Aaron Ladd here in Kansas City, Steven Serta behind the board. Coast to Coast is out of here.